Welcome to the Tech Lab Brief, your daily technology heartbeat and reminder that reports of the machines taking over have been greatly exaggerated. I'm your host, BK. Let's jump right into it. The Great Leak. So that's the Pixel 11 and the Galaxy Tab S12 Ultra. Traditionally, tech giants adhere to predictable launch cycles, with Google usually releasing its flagship Pixel phones in the fall, October specifically. However, with the tech industry as hyper-competitive as it is in 2026, this meant moving its entire Made by Google event significantly earlier, scheduled for August 12th, 2026, or just August 12th. So that's just another day, right? Leaks have become very common. I remember a day in time when we used to really care about the next big tech thing coming up, the next tech devices. But things are moving so fast now. And yes, hyper competitivity is causing Google to say, you know what, this leak happened. Let's just push up our release dates. I think I kind of like that, if you don't mind me saying. It's in my mind, it's keeping the tech industry honest. It's saying, hey, I know you guys want to have this extra time in your development cycle to maybe, let's say, make sure the testing all goes well. But if you're ready, if the product's already ready, which we know that companies have their pipeline, especially tech companies have their development pipeline. And if it's ready to go, it's ready to go. And of course, it's all up to Google and their internal everything to decide whether or not they can actually do it by August. Because, of course, we don't want to have technology released that's not ready for the public, right? Where consumers will spend their hard-earned cash to invest their funds, their time, money, and effort into the technology. So obviously, breaking NDAs is not cool. If this was an ND, if this leak was related to a violation of NDAs, well, that's not great. But I appreciate that we're keeping tech honest. And I can appreciate that the meta of leaks in this day and age is pushing tech to be more honest. The tech giants to be more. I'm going to keep using this word honest in their production cycle. I get that there's traditional dates where they do their events, their launch parties, or their launch events. And best of luck to Google to make that happen within the, I guess, 1 month deadline, that the 1 month timeline they pushed up to. The great tax. There's a rush for self-hosting There's a rush for self-hosting that's driving up these chip prices. Over the last few decades, consumer electronics have steadily decreased in price. However, the $700 billion global investment in AI data centers is breaking this trend. Data centers are consuming 70% of global memory production in 2026, starving the supply chain for everyday tech and triggering widespread inflation on consumer components. Yeah, so this is to me one of the major pieces that's going on in tech, and we've waited a little bit later in the week at the Tech Lab Brief to cover this story, given that this is our first week, because we want to show that there's more to this than just the money, right? And there's definitely more to this whole memory situation than stock price going up. It is a happy consequence for those who have timed the market properly, who put the investments into the chip companies like Micron, and who would have seen Hynix coming? I mean, Samsung would have been solid. And yeah, but then we see how this is trickling into at the consumer level, right? And so during this morning's brief, we covered with Jaden the financial aspect, the finance sector of everything going on in tech. And everything seems to be going up except for poor IBM that gave up a whole quarter of its value to, I guess, the ones who sold. And it's more than just stock price. It's more than just Wall Street. It's now the consumer electronics. To me, this ongoing narrative, I facetiously use this phrase of the great tax, but this is all trickling down, I guess, is the phrase we'll use here. And the market wants what it wants. That's kind of what I've been leading into. That may have been too much of a jump. We'll see. Apple devices are going up. That was recently announced that they have to raise their prices now. And honestly, hats off to Apple for keeping the prices of their tech pretty stable for the better part of a decade, if not two. In fact, they've just kept making it cheaper, right? I mean, the MacBook Neo, and I don't want to keep going Apple fanboy, but Apple's forced to raise their prices. And, I see here that Microsoft also announced that they have to increase the price of their Xboxes. So the prices are going up. And if we dig a little deeper into the why, and we see the chips, it goes two ways, right? The chip prices are going up, thus all the devices are going up. But if we look even behind the chips, the original headline here is that the rush for self-hosting drives up the chip prices. So there's this massive rush to build data centers, and I wonder why. On that note, the Great Alliance. NVIDIA joins forces with a Japanese robotics company. Not just any company, but a giant, it says. So Japan is facing an acute national crisis driven by a rapidly aging society and severe labor shortages. To combat this, the nation is pivoting from software-only chatbots to physical AI, developing autonomous smart robots that could think, learn, and safely work alongside humans in factories, hospitals, and homes. Cool. See, market wants what it wants, right? And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. I'll try to contain it. There's someone very near and dear in my life, a very respected member of my family, an elder member of my family, who, when I was growing up, he would say to me all the time is the most valuable thing. And yeah, I just, like, it's weird. I think back on my life and it kind of just didn't register until I would say relatively recently. I'm like, oh, that's what it meant. So Japan is dealing with an aging population, and they are also dealing with a bit of a population growth issue. But what are we going to do about it? What is Japan going to do about it? Well, they're going to robotics. They want to build robots to help the aging population to do the manual work, the manual labor. We can go back to our morning brief with Jaden talking about the AI versus the industrial revolution, and how we are here now because of the mechanization of the muscle, and now we're mechanizing the mind. And I appreciate that NVIDIA is making this move to move their market, well, not move, but shift, or I guess shift some of their focus. I doubt it's all their focus towards the Japanese market, where they have this specific problem of an elder population of human beings who are now just struggling to do the daily things that at a younger age are not so hard to do. So that's that. I much appreciated. I always hoping for the best, right? The Great Migration. Western tech goes Chinese AI. We've covered this quite a few times, but I guess in certain angles, but we're really starting to wrap these up into like larger narrative threads of where this is all going. And in my hand, I think all roads are going to converge, and we'll see we'll see what exactly that means. But to continue on with the story, Silicon Valley giants shifted their corporate billing from flat subscriptions to usage-based token pricing. Enterprise AI budgets exploded, forcing companies to look for cost-effective alternatives for routine tasks. So we just talked about Japan trying to solve the aging population problem, and now tech companies over in Silicon Valley are looking to solve the cost efficiency problem, I guess, the automation, the I don't want to have to click so many buttons to make this thing, to make the next version of my software, or to make the next version of my software. So we have some examples here, like DoorDash, Airbnb, Lindy, and we're not calling them out to say, shame on you for going to China. It's it's really, at the end of the day, a cost thing. There's a saying about how business is business, and the market wants what it wants. And we've covered previously about the rising cost of frontier AIs, and we will just call them out, right? OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and XAI. And to be honest, I feel like they are actually doing their best to keep the costs down. I remember when ChatGPT by OpenAI, ChatGPT O1 Pro first came out, and it was like $200 per million tokens. And it was like, excuse me? And now with 5.6 Sol, I believe it's like 50 or $60 per million token, which, I mean, if we're going to compare Sol to O1, I could insert some joke there, but I'm not that clever. Yeah, so the key point here is that economic survival is overcoming geopolitical instability, right? Because facetiously, we put a picture of California, the state of California, and the backdrop of the Bay Bridge hugging these Chinese AI companies. And there's more to it than just it's really not as simple as like, oh, they're using Chinese AI, so that means they support China. These Chinese AIs are running, like, it depends on where the AIs run, but that could be a whole nother line of yapping to happen. So, you know, I think this is a net plus. There is the previous segments with NVIDIA and Jensen Huang teaming up with China, with Japan, and they're very, very real problem. And now we're looking at the American situation with all of our apps. And, those are solved by all these app and tech companies, startups were built to solve some real life problem that a certain segment of mostly the US market face. And mm, there was some transition thing that I was going for, but I think I lost it. So we'll move on to the next story, which is also just so happens to be related to China. The Great Breakup. China enacts world's first major crackdown on AI romance. Fearing a deepening demographic crisis, a shrinking population, and falling birth rates, Beijing is targeting technologies that could pull young citizens out of the real-world marriages and family planning market. The Chinese government wants to stop young adults from treating AI as emotional or romantic substitutes for human relationships. And as I was reading that, it came to me. What's the transition? What's wrong with the world now? People acting like they ain't got no mamas. What's wrong with the world, mama? People acting like they ain't got no mamas. I think the whole world is addicted to the trauma. Anyway, where's the love? I think, and I think that's enough really to dig in there. We could vamp a little bit longer on this situation with China, the Chinese young adult market. And it's not just China either, right? This is happening in Japan. This is happening in Korea. The Eastern countries have this really bad declining population birth rate. And it's maybe not just East Asia. Might also be in the other, I'm going to say first world countries, but I don't think there's as much of a population problem in the third world countries. So, where is the love, right? And stepping back to, I guess, I do want to go back to this because to me, this is, love is a crazy word, right? And there's something I read somewhere about love, the definition of love and like the different ways it's expressed. This thing about 5 love languages and all that. But I believe that there's something in love. I've heard somewhere about love, how to truly love properly and all these things, that it's best done in 2 ways. Loving myself, I mean, gotta be careful with that one, but it's paired with a second way to love, right? Loving thy neighbor. And I don't want to get all preachy. So on that note, that brings us to today's knowledge segment. Today's knowledge segment is brought to you by BK Tech Labs. BK Tech Labs, ushering in an era of collective intelligence, bringing an end to the gatekeeping of knowledge. Join us, become a member, shape the narrative. So today's knowledge segment, I'm really excited about this one. In fact, it also ties pretty well with the stories that we've been covering. Have you guys heard of the dead internet theory? So a little bit of backstory, right? So for years, the dead internet theory was dismissed as an eerie online conspiracy, claiming that the human-centric web died in the late 2010s and was replaced by an artificial landscape of bots talking to other bots. It used to be conspiracy theory. That was how it was kind of looked at. Today, that theory has transitioned into cold, hard Data. Major network infrastructure reports reveal that automated bot scripts, crawlers, and AI agents now account for nearly 60% of global internet traffic, outnumbering human activity online. What are we doing on our phones? Or what are they doing on their virtual phone? So let's dig into that, the dead internet theory. The dead internet theory explained. Let's do it. The belief that the vast majority of the internet, the posts, comments, articles, and overall activity we interact with daily is no longer generated by real humans. Maybe, is this brief generated by real humans? So there's two versions of the theory. The dead internet theory is split into two distinct paths. I like this one. There's the strong conspiracy version. So that's like 4chan, Reddit, 2021, claiming that the death of organic internet was a deliberate, coordinated effort. Did you do this? Is this your fault that we're like this now? And then there's the weak or modern realistic version. And it strips away the shadowy government cabals and focuses on market forces, economics, and technology. So generative AI, accurate curation, which, yes, full disclosure, our briefs are very much prepared with the help of AI. Not mindless AI, but yes, the mechanization of the mind, of certain creative elements of the mind are leveraged to help make this brief possible. So why it feels more true now than ever. So over half percent rule. So we talked about, right, 60%, the AI slop explosion, bots talking to bots, algorithmic homogenization. Let's pause there. So over 50% rule, yes, right? And what is this even listing? Why it feels more true now than ever, right? The AI slop explosion, guys. Yeah, we've really got to learn when to. We're really at the point where it's a skill to tell the difference between AI generated content and not. And then maybe, well, you know what? That's more nuanced. AI generated is more general and broad, but really, we really have to know when something's AI slop or not. Slop. Just an FYI. Slop is a word that comes from describing the thing that's fed to pigs, and I believe that slop in the agricultural context, slop is made by like putting together like food waste and like garbage. Going back to this, bots talking to bots. That's like pretty. That's definitely a thing, for better or worse. Very much for better or worse. It's like could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. That's really all up to us, isn't it? Algorithmic homogenization. That term kind of got me there. So because search engines and social feeds reward search engine optimization and algorithmic triggers, content has become uniform. Instead of unique human voices, we are often served articles and videos engineered by machines to satisfy search engine algorithms. Yeah, so it's not just that AI is like everything's like automated and AI is like taking over the world. It's that us as humans, we learned how the algorithms work. And yes, Google, it's you. You guys define the internet. Like you guys are a huge part of making the internet what it is today. And there's words like search rank, index rank, something rank, and it's a well-known algorithm for how like web pages come out when you do Google searches. And us as humans, we gain that system, right? We gained that system, and we found the way to optimize for that. And that's that whole term, search engine optimization, that came out of that. We're almost done here, so finishing up. Consequences. Where are the humans, right? So if the public web is increasingly perceived as dead or overrun by synthetic noise, human behavior is shifting in response. And then there's this idea of the dark forest of the internet. Rather than posting on wide open public forums where they're likely to interact with bots or algorithms with boosted rage bait, many real people are retreating to smaller, private digital spaces. And on that note, that brings our knowledge segment to an end. I do want to pause real quick and see if there's anyone in the chat. I promised a friend earlier that I would do that. All right, we got Stanley here who's asking, I wonder who actually profits the most from keeping these massive bot networks alive and running on major social media platforms. That's a very good question, Stanley. Who profits? Bum bum ba-dum, bum bum ba-dum. So again, for better or worse, right? There's good bots, there's bad bots. And we have to be careful about getting too hung up on the bad bots. Yes, they are out there, but there is such a thing as a good bot. And I'm thinking about put the image here later on the VOD. iRobot. Will Smith. I know that whole Chris Rock thing was a mess, but you know, I think that that movie did its fantastic job of laying out a more objective perspective of what the future of AI-enabled and robotics is gonna look like for our society. I'm gonna bring up another name, Isaac Asimov, who's the original author of that book from that movie that movie portrays. There's this thing called it's called like the 3 rules or something, the 3 rules of humanity, something, right? It's like these 3 rules that the robots cannot break. And it's like will not harm another, and like they're in order. There's a priority. One cannot override the other. The most important one is that the robot cannot harm other human beings. I think the robot can the robot cannot harm human beings, bring harm to human beings. The robot must obey the orders of the human. A robot cannot inflict self harm. I think those are the rules. Someone can fact check me there. Survival is important, right? And that's, I think, I want to say where the whole concept of money and currency originated from. And now Stan asks a question about who's profiting, who's making that extra cheddar. Yes, that is the question. We wonder, and that wonder only take us so far. And if we're wondering because it's like, well, can I get some of that? Well, there's something to be said about how we make our bread. And on that note, that brings us now to, I don't know why this is so low, but the barcade segment. And here we go. It's current state of the barcade. We are admittedly here because we, as BK Tech Labs, are still not keeping up with our due diligence to keep up with the global arcade. And as I've been told by a very great leader about leadership, that a great leader leads by example. Yes, it's the Sun Tzu quote from The Art of War, but it was told and drilled into my head by someone greater than he. Moving quickly, the move here, I believe, is this bishop takes this rook. That's a very nice trapping of the rook, so we'll do that. That's a prediction, actually. I'm gonna make the move for the opponent team. Great. Well, yeah, what's the point of this anyway, right? Anybody wondering? Chess, tic-tac-toe. Oh, it looks like the previous tic-tac-toe was on an hour cadence, and anyway. So we'll start with the middle because that is how we play tic-tac-toe. Connect 4. We'll just, yeah, take, oh, keep drawing the line. It's good. Stop filling up the columns. And then checkers, it's red's turn now. And so, yeah, I would develop this piece here. Just try to get closer to the king. And that's that, which brings our barcade segment to an end. Which actually brings today's brief to an end. We hope you enjoyed watching this cast just as much as we did preparing for it. Join us tomorrow, bright and early at 8 a.m. And as always, we would love to know what you think about this stream. Please leave your comments in the chat, and maybe, just maybe, you might consider joining us as a member as well. And now, your minute of Zen. How'd I do? All right. So, safe ride back home. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you bright and early tomorrow. Bye now.